I planned it for years. And so, but I also planned the other places that I've lived. But I was always planning, like, okay, France has always felt the most like home. But I would also go each year to kind of like scout the different city. And I said, oh, wow, cool. I wanted to connect. I'm a singer. And all of their mouths dropped open. They went, we were just standing here talking about how Jacques wants to find a female singer. And so
Wow.
it was like my dog took me out to this little fated encounter. Within 2 weeks, I'm in a band. I've actually never lived anywhere longer than 4 years. So the idea is also to challenge myself, like, can I put down the roots?
What if the place that could change your life isn't Paris, Nice, or Provence, but a smaller French town you've barely heard of? My guest today, Kim Mott, is an astrocartographer and a lifelong traveler who spent years exploring different places before choosing where to finally put down roots in France. In this episode, we'll discover how she made that choice, what happened once she arrived, and what her story can teach us about finding the place that truly fits the life we want to build. Yeah, and that leads us to the following part of this conversation, because there was a nice surprise when I contacted you. I really wanted to speak about territory, because I know a lot of people feel some sort of illogical pull towards France, because I know sometimes people have built their whole life in their home country, in the USA or Canada or wherever, and suddenly they decide to just go, and maybe sometimes the people around don't understand, and it seems to be a little bit illogical. For you and I, we've been like digital nomads our whole life, so we are kind of used to it. But for some people, with a former interview, the guest used the word life quake. For some people, it's a major life quake. So could you tell us a little bit of the reasoning behind why France now? Because you lived everywhere in the world. So could you tell us a little bit about your own situation?
Jupiter is very active in my chart as a theme. And everything I described to you of my whole life arc so far of travel writing, and I have a Jupiter line going right through France. And so that might be why I just resonate so deeply with it, is because this, remember how I said people have certain themes, planets they might play out over and over. So it's first of all that. It's also on the IC, and that also can describe, remember how I said IC is home life. And Jupiter is associated with opportunity and luck, and like I said, expansion and spirituality and learning and teaching. And it's just it's kind of a favorite planet because it's the lucky planet, that kind of thing. That's one of the two what we call benefic planets. One of the ones that gives you treats like Venus, versus Saturn and Mars that give you challenges. And so it's just a feel good area. And because I've been such an explorer, and like you have traveled a lot, lived in a lot of places, worked in a lot of places, I just always had it kind of in my mind, like when I feel like I can settle down and my feet won't get itchy again, or when I feel like I kind of almost deserve it, because some of us have a wound around abundance or receiving luck and opportunity and gifts, those kind of things. And I do have some hard aspects to Jupiter in my chart. So as I did kind of like work on myself, self-development, I started feeling more deserving of just ease and the pleasure and the niceness. I also have that Venus line there in France as well. And so both of the benefics kind of hugging you can feel so nice. It can also feel like self-indulgence and overdoing it and stuff like that. So there's also that to consider. And that's why I wouldn't send everyone to just the benefic lines, but just thinking through it over the years, where I feel the best, where I feel the most like nourished and recharged, like I said, or feel most at home, and where I have very good rapport with the people. Again, Venus can be that rapport, how we relate to others and those sort of things. And it's just made the most sense to me, almost like as a reward to myself, to make it my new home base, instead of like, oh, I should go and try out a Pluto and go through some intense experiences, or I should go to Saturn and work really hard, or go to Mars and wear myself out and burn out. It's kind of a treat to myself, and a part of my journey to learn to accept sort of the ease and the gifts, because I've had a lot of struggle, especially in childhood and those kind of things where those patterns got set. So that part of it is like psycho-spiritual, but also it's just fun. It feels great there. I have a great time there, and I never have had like terrible experiences. In the US, that's where I've had all the traumas and things like that. And not that I'm saying it's because of the US, I'm saying that's what I have going on energetically there. So it's just, and it's also interestingly the place that my chart mirrors itself. it flips backwards. So I get to see the other side of myself.
Just to go back to the choice for you to indulge and go to France, was it like a very conscious decision of you? You were like, okay, now I'm going as an astrocartographer, and with all the knowledge I have, I decide to go there?
Yes, absolutely. I planned it for years. And so, but I also planned the other places that I've lived, so I was living in Tbilisi, Georgia, and Kutaisi, Georgia, the beautiful Caucasus Mountains, to test out. I like to test out the lines. So it's not just me like reading a book or just making something up of like what I think it might be. I like to see it for myself and feel it. And so I've lived in a lot of different places for that reason too. And I tend to stay at least 1 year, 2 years for those reasons. But I was always planning like, okay, France has always felt the most like home. But I would also go each year to kind of like scout the different city. Okay, how would it feel to live here? I'll stay for 2 or 3 months. I think if anyone's going to be moving to France, and maybe they're a student or something or somebody interested in it, it's if you can afford it and have the time, going on the scouting trip and really seeing how you feel in the different places and relate to it. Do you need public transportation? Do you need proximity to Paris for airports? Do you need big city, small city? Do you need a village? What is the way that you want to arrange your lifestyle? Because the practical side is just as important as the energetic side. I found my window of France that I was like, okay, this is my ideal area, but I want to check out, Tours or Blois or Amboise or Bourges or different places and just see where I feel the most comfortable and resonant. Does it have the shops I like to go to? Does it have the weather I like? And yeah, so those fine tuning parts can take some time. That said, I've also gone sight unseen to places and lived there for a year or two, and it's all it works out that way too. So don't feel like if it's going to break your budget or something, you have to do it. But if possible, it's nice to do the fine tunes as well.
So you explored Bourges in one of your scouting trip?
Yes, and have been a few times, but and then the final time before I was choosing, I just stayed for a couple of months just to see. Okay, I'm buying groceries. I'm making my own food at home. Less tourism, going to the restaurants or things like that. And in fact, I also have a vertex line. It's a thing in astrology related to fated encounters with other people. And so when I did eventually move there in February this year, 2026, I was taking my dog out for a quick pee at night at like 10 p.m., taking her out for a quick walk. And you know how the French love all the little dogs. And so she went up and was sniffing another little Yorkie, and they were getting to know each other. And as they were doing that, the three people standing there with their dog were chatting, and they were, oh, how are you doing tonight? And my French is I need to take your classes, but it was good enough to get through this conversation. But they said, oh, how are you doing? And I said, I'd had this intention. Okay, I want to join a band when I move to Bourges. I want to get the community, right? I want to get back in a band. I really missed singing and the music. And so I was always on the lookout, like, how am I going to connect to the music community? But as we're chatting, I noticed the guy has a guitar, okay. And so there was a couple with the dog and the guy, and Jacques. And I said, oh, are you a musician? And he said, yes. And his friend said, no, he's the musician of Bourges. He's playing out all the time. He's a very active musician. He works full time in it. He's an excellent musician. So he was talking up his friend, and I said, oh, wow, cool. I wanted to connect. I'm a singer. And all of their mouths dropped open. They went, we were just standing here talking about how Jacques wants to find a female singer.
Wow.
And it was like my dog took me out to this little fated encounter right on the vertex line where I live, and things like that happen to me all the time there. But it was like within 2 weeks, I'm in a band, and we love each other. It's such a great. So,
what's the name of your band? Comment ça s'appelle?
We named it. We haven't decided yet, but we practice on Tuesdays. So yes, she's always playing out in different bands or whatever. But we formed our own little trio unit. So, jazz.
Good way to integrate music. If you are a musician, if you can sing, I find that music to integrate in a new country is like the best, no?
Exactly. And then there's the Printemps festival in Bourges.
Printemps de Bourges.
A nice music connection. That was one of the other reasons I chose Bourges, because it has that connection to music.
Well, to be fair, a lot of my students, people I talk to, they are shocked by the level of culture and art in most of the French town and city. I have a student right now in Périgueux, and she was like, "Oh my God, there are so many festivals."
Yes.
And I was thinking that it's actually maybe a particularity to France because we do have an artist statue called Intermittent du Spectacle. So we actually, it's not as good as it used to be, but we do try to protect art and the artists. So I think
Yes.
that's why we have so many good shows and
Yes.
music, and one of the reasons
I,
in
I
France.
think it's one of the reasons Americans are so charmed by France too, because we don't have that so much. Some cities do, but it's not a pervasive part of the culture to support art and see it as a real job and as a real contribution to the culture.
Mm.
And so, yeah, I love that. And people can do the same thing, like I said, with the scouting or really with YouTube and Google. We can research so much ahead. You can find what is the specialty of a certain town or city or something like that. And, a lot of clients will come to me. They think they have to move to Paris or Nice because that's
Mm.
the only places they know of. I would be like moving to the United States and only could consider New York or LA. If you don't want to live in a huge city like that, and but you want something that has its own particular specialty, France is a perfect place for that. And it's and even if you don't have like the most extraordinary astrocartography in the place, like I said, we can also really dial into the subtleties of the chart and find even maybe a place that you wouldn't have heard of. I do this all the time with clients, like, oh, what about this place? And they're like, oh, I've never heard. And they're writing down the location, and then they come back later like, oh my God, that place is amazing, because they'll also just energetically resonate with it as well.
Yeah. So what was for you in your line, what was the competitors of Bourges? You mentioned Tours before. Like what
So
was the other town or city that you considered?
I mean, I have some good options. Even Orléans or Paris could be good, but again, just on the practical side of like, oh, I don't want to live in big cities anymore. I'm too old for that, like or things like that. So, and the other thing with Tours is amazing for language learning, and because they have the centers there. But it was a little bit young for me as well. It's a big university town,
It's a
so that
student, yeah, student town.
yeah, yeah,
Mm.
yeah. So, Nantes could have been a good choice. I went also to the smaller cities of like Blois. Blois. It's not the hardest thing for me to say is that town name. How do you say it? Blois. Blois.
Blois?
Yeah, there are a lot of good contenders. Even smaller towns like La Châtre and there's Nevers and but people will get shocked because my sister and her family came to visit in Bourges, and she and her wife and I were talking over a drink during Printemps this year, and and I told them the population of Bourges, and they were both very shocked because it was smaller than their city in upstate New York, but they were thinking of Bourges as a bigger city because European cities tend to be so much more dense.
Mhm.
So American cities can get very spread out and sprawl out. So when Americans are thinking of moving, they will think, oh, that's a really small town, but they don't realize there's Sephora and H&M and like everything is a walking distance, and it feels like a little more like what we would think of as a city in the United States.
So you said that Bourges is a little bit of a secret. You don't want to speak too much about Bourges because there is a lot of comments like the last interview, the woman also settled down in Beaugency, which is a town that it's no one really speak about, a little bit like underrated. Are there many American expats in Bourges?
I don't know of any. My landlord told me that she used to rent to an American guy, but I haven't met anyone who's living there. I've heard some English spoken and people maybe traveling because they want to see some castles or, you know, villages nearby or something. But and I think that there are some of people who live in the smaller villages and then come in on the weekend for a nice restaurant and errands and things. But it's generally when I meet local, they're shocked that I picked Bourges. They're like, "Whoa, an American moved here! Why? Why?" They're very curious. Why did you move here? Why did you pick this over Paris or something? Because they're so used to no one knowing about it. And so it's more of a like I'm more of a novelty there. In Paris, I would
And
just
they love it. They must love you. Like, yeah.
yeah, because they're like, oh, cool, she likes our place, and I really do. I like truly love it. So it's a nice way to connect, and it's also a good way to learn, be forced to learn more French because
Exactly.
not people are speaking English. So yeah, it's a little.
Yeah, you have a different treatment. I see that the difference of my students who live in Nice versus students who live in the countryside. Some people, I have a student, she lives in a tiny village, so that's even the next level. Like there is zero foreigners, or
No,
like. But yeah, it's different experience. I imagine the treatment of people. So it's been 5 months or 6 months since you are in Bourges?
Yes, and it's kind of fun because like I was saying with the band, my bandmates don't speak English. So I've had to be forced to learn, technical terms around music. Like what key is this in? I had to learn how to say that or things like that I wouldn't normally if I'm at a restaurant or I'm just meeting somebody, you're not gonna say those things. So it's been already a very fun way to learn. Or the local cheese shop that I like to go to, I asked him to educate me more about the
Les
cheese.
fromages à Bourges, crottin de chèvre,
Yeah.
bon fromage.
Yeah.
And so are you still in your honeymoon stage after 6 months? Is it still the honeymoon or
Absolutely, yeah.
yeah?
Absolutely. And I think it's going to be tricky for me to settle in general because I've always had itchy feet. But I think also because I've stayed in the honeymoon phase on a lot of places that I've lived because I've actually never lived anywhere longer than 4 years. So I'm always in the honeymoon phase. So the idea is also to challenge myself, like, can I put down the roots? I have grown children, they're excited to come visit, they love the area as well. But it's like, okay, this idea of choosing a place is a bit new to me specifically, which I'm a very strange case. I'm sure most people watching don't relate to that. But it's just like almost like a marriage, committing to a place or something.
Yeah, I was wondering about that. Like, have you ever experienced with yourself or with your clients that some places will be excellent, like very favorable for one aspect of your life, and that would be amazing? For instance, people who had terrible luck for love, like they arrive to a place and suddenly everything aligns. But you mentioned, for instance, abundance or finance, it would be terrible. Does that happen when you have like those strong paradox or?
It can happen depending on the person's chart, especially if they have things already opposing each other. They're going to always oppose each other, just in different houses. So we're changing the topic area of life that gets affected, but it will still be in opposition. And I even have one of those in my chart where I have the moon, which is your emotions and intuition and your subconscious and kind of your inside self, the interior experience of self, and opposing my Venus. So in relationships, like I can be a problematic romantic partner sometimes because my emotions are having trouble connecting to like that give take. Especially when I was younger, and when I would travel, I have a moon line going right through Rome. I know, I was like in my early 20s. I'm 47 now, so it's more than 20 years ago, and I hated Italy. I thought it was so chaotic. I thought it was so annoying. I couldn't cope. It was like really stressful for me because the moon, again, it's going to trigger your emotions, and because I have a difficulty in the chart there, it was triggering that difficulty. I didn't know that at the time, but over the years after like making that conscious aware, like I'm doing self work and development, I realized, oh, it was me. I was the chaos. It was my emotions that were experiencing that. It wasn't necessary. And now, like the last time I was in Rome which I've been to many times now, was last March when I was doing a Julius Caesar video, which I think you hinted at earlier. And I was just walking around going, how could I have ever hated this place? It feels nourishing to me and cozy now because instead of triggering that, it brings in the development that I've worked on in that emotional realm and those kind of things. So sometimes we can even in different time of our life or a different stage, like you were saying, different period, experience the line differently because it's more of like, what stage are we also in internally or something like that. But like to your point about for me, I'm a kind of a thorough perfectionist when it comes to my work. So when I'm calculating somebody's chart and what we really want to activate, I wouldn't necessarily recommend a place that's only going to amp relationships, but it's going to destroy your finances or make you depressed or something like that. So I try to find like the best, configuration that will support a lot of different. But I have had clients where they saw it on an app or they tried to read the map and then they thought it was going to be one thing, but it turned into something else.
By the way, if you are new here, bonjour, I'm Deborah, a French teacher and the founder of the French language school Feel Good French. If you'd like more resources on French language, culture, and life in France, simply scan the QR code on the screen. You'll find my website, blog, newsletter, and plenty of free content. And if you are enjoying this conversation, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel in order to follow more interviews to come. And that will make my day. Merci beaucoup, and let's go back to the interview. That made me think of, I know that, myself included, we have a tendency sometimes to be a little bit control freak, to have all the elements in our possession before making a decision. And I was thinking, like, as you mentioned, like astrocartography is a wonderful self-discovery tool. And what I find amazing is that it triggers the right question, like what do I want? What do I want to explore? What part do I want to activate? But as a consultant, like when you do your session, do you have a little kind of some sort of warning in the sense that yes, as you mentioned, the maps don't lie. That's what the maps are saying. But do you warn people as well that we can't like control? Because I think maybe sometimes it could activate that, like, okay, I'm going to find the best place for this, or you know what I mean?
Yeah, like I said, you can also get obsessed with it or like overthink it because there's so many little factors. So yeah, it definitely can be something like that. And I've had clients like that. They just kind of get really obsessed with it and they want to keep doing appointments to test new places. It's more like thinking of your whole life or thinking of your whole spiritual life or something like that. I don't actually consider astrology to be related to spirituality. It's actually a tool or a language, like I said, that's correlating conditions. But a lot of people use it as a tool of spirituality and self-development. And you certainly can, just like you could use anything. You know, you could use water as a spiritual tool. So, you know, you can use astrology certainly that way. But yeah, anytime we do overboard or get obsessed with it, it can also be kind of harmful as well, and you know, control us instead of be a tool that helps us. And so yeah, I would be a little careful with that. Not that it can be really fun as well to even incorporate the idea of timing, which is something I didn't talk about. Like part of my experience in the early years going to Italy was related to my internal world of what I was developing. But you know, there could have been timing factors too, because we also have what are called transits. Like I said, your birth chart is a freeze frame, and that map is a freeze frame, but everything is still moving out there in space. So sometimes we'll get something activated, and in a certain location, it might be louder than another place. And so I've also had people like they've had a really hard time selling a house for a really long time, but then I can see the timing coming up where it's going to be much easier for them. And I'll say, especially like this week, make sure you're doing open houses or something. And like that, you know, a day that I would tell them they're having a transit, I had people email me something recently. A woman had a house on the market in Texas for 2 years. And I told her there's a good time coming up. Make sure you seize this moment. Because as that transit comes by, it could be very, very fortunate. You know, I was born in Colorado. I've lived there a couple of different times, but my chart will always be related to that place. And then we can, like I say, mitigate things or change things and adjust them. But you're gonna still have to learn the life lessons you were born with.
So for you and Bourges, was the time right as well according to the maps? Like...
Yes, definitely. The timing is like what I was saying. I planned it for some years. You know,
Okay.
I knew the window of time that would be fortunate for seizing that moment. Yeah, and I had probably the luckiest story of all time with real estate about renting my apartment, which is, you know, typically kind of difficult, especially for
Yeah,
Americans.
not easy.
No problems at all, smooth sailing.
So I know that you've got itchy feet, and you signed the lease for how long? Like what's your lease? Because for people who are a bit nomadic, sometimes it's hard to commit. So that's so good.
Exactly. It's for 1 year because it's furnished or partially furnished, so it's the 1 year. But if I don't see that I would. I realized in myself, I'm okay. I know I will still get itchy feet, but Europe is such a lovely place to go. Like I can go up to Finland finally if I want to go on a trip, but I have my home base there, and it's affordable enough that I still have that, and that just the idea of my home base being there changes things. As astrologers, we consider like where you get your mail or even where you have your driver's license address to be where we would locate your home for transit. So I was, the idea is consciously deciding that's where I'm getting my mail now. That's where my home base is.
Le courrier à la maison.
Exactly.
Super.
And I should say too that I feel that France is so diverse with the landscape and the types of things going on in different cities and little villages and the camping or whatever. You could just never leave France and stay entertained, like as far as so much to see and do.
I have a lot of friends, you know. I think in Europe these days, a lot of people want to slow travel. They don't want to take the flight anymore. And I have a lot of friends, they just decide to now take all their holidays in France, take the train, do like biking trips. I know a lot of people who do biking trip like a vélo, and they decide also to value their territory and just because as you mentioned, it's I myself, I feel like an ignorant of my own country. There are so many places I don't know. And now, thanks to you, I know that I have a strong line that runs in France, but we are going to that. But
Yeah.
I had one question that I couldn't find the answer by myself. You mentioned to me last time that because I work with a lot of Americans um, and or North American people, and you mentioned that a lot of Americans are pulled towards Europe, towards France, because they have a line there. But I didn't understand like how is that possible? Like how is that in link with the line of their birth? Like how does that? Could you give us? And it might be hard to explain, but how could you? And also how the lines connect with the ancestry. This I'm not also too sure about this aspect.
I'll often see Americans, and I just noticed this over time. It's not something that was taught in a class or like book I read or something. There's a thing called the vertex. Remember that what I was telling you is related to fated encounters, and around me meeting the band. It's like I live near my vertex. I see. It's also in range of that area of Lyon and other places where I've had romantic partners come from or people. So I see people get like sucked into vertex lines. I even lived in Norway in Stavanger, and in my early 20s, my ex-husband was in the Air Force. So there's a NATO base there, so it wasn't like my choice to go there, but it's right on that vertex line, that same fated encounters, and I'm still friends with like my neighbors from there. 25 years later, you connect really a lot with those places, and it happens to be on the IC. So IC, as I mentioned earlier, is that bottom of heaven, and it can be related to ancestry and fact. So when people sometimes have a grouping of IC lines, whether it's the vertex or planets, you like for instance, you had a bunch in New Zealand and that area. So it's like that can sometimes indicate it's actually kind of I don't know why it works, but it's oftentimes we'll say like that person may have ancestry from that area. So that's one thing that people will often get drawn to. And just think about it kind of being in your DNA or something. But also that vertex specifically, it's because of like just the way that we divide up what we call the celestial sphere. It's going to get really technical if I go too deep to describe it, but the vertex is always on the western side of the chart. Remember where that descendant is, where the sun would set, and for anyone. And so when people are born in the United States, they're often going to have the vertex in that western part of Europe, and often will be in France or the UK or Ireland or something like that. And that's why some people will just get, like I said, just drawn, magnetized to that area. Yes. And it could just be related to their own fate and the fate of being born in the US or something. So I think that's maybe why a lot. I mean, let's not kid around. France is the most visited country in the world, right? It's the most popular. It's the popular kid of the globe, right? But Americans seem to, in particular, have a lot of Francophiles, and I think that could possibly be why. It's because a lot of our vertex lines.
It's interesting because I find like the people I work with have this strong pulls, as if that sometimes I'm like, you are so brave to do that, to decide to sell everything, like and go. I know a lot of solo women, 60 years old, they decide to just come. But I find sometimes they even say themselves, it's not necessarily being brave, is that they don't feel they have a choice. Like, as you mentioned, I like the word magnetic. It's just like they feel that there is no other choice. They have to go there. So that could be I find it interesting to have like elements of explanations like that, and also the ancestry. Apply all you've been explaining into one concrete example with my map based on my birth date and hours. I know that the consultations are quite long, and this would be very much like a shortcut of an explanation. Yes. But it could show an example to people of, for instance, for me, as I mentioned, I moved a lot. I have the same as you. I haven't moved as much as you, but I've got this itchy feet, and I have difficulty to settle down, and I have a curiosity for building, like always starting a new blank canvas. I like to explore. I think I'm an eternal explorer, and we decided to keep your interpretation quite spontaneous. So I don't know if you want to how you want to conduct this interpretation.
Definitely, I'll pull up your map. I'll share my screen just like I would in a client session. Like you said, client sessions are, usually at least 75 minutes long, so we go in very much depth. But just to show you and the people watching, what a map really looks like and how we would explore it if we're using a software like this, or if people are pulling their map on astro.com or something, sort of what to look for, and those sorts of things. So that should pop up for you.
Zeus is the name of the professional software that you use, no?
This is the one I use. I have several different forms of software over the years, but this is the one that is the best one, in my opinion, for this. Don't run out and download it unless you're an astrologer, because you won't understand it. But also, it's like really kind of a difficult one to learn, but it is the absolute best one. So it can be great because we can zoom into street level in towns, and we can even look at the energy in really, really close up, but we can also see the whole world. So again, the idea of your chart, your birth chart, becoming like a 3D situation. I'm going to turn off a couple of lines just because I have everything turned on, and I'll show them again. But just to show what it might look like if you were to see your map on one of the free websites like astro.com, you can see what I mean about it being a 2D version. This map is a flat map of a 3D situation. So that's why everything gets a little bit crazy near the polar regions, is because all those lines are like wrapping around the sphere of the globe. But it is, related exactly to your birth chart, this natal chart over here. So we call it a natal chart or birth chart, same thing. Remember how I was saying that those 4 angles, those 4 charging outlets of the zodiac are so important. This one here is that rising sign, that ascendant that I was mentioning. Here, up here at the top of the chart, is that midheaven, the public life, public sphere. Then here's those important relationships, the descendant over here. And then we have the IC, the home life, private life, ancestry, things like that. So those are those 4 angles and how they look on the chart. And then you can see that different planets will be in different places. If I were to turn on this timing here and just show you how important the actual time of birth is, like we were talking about, you can see that if I were to take you, like 45 minutes earlier on your day, you could see that now your ascendant is at 1 degree. It's almost different there at the sign of Leo. But if I were to take you 10 minutes before that again, you can see that your entire chart would be different. You would have those planets here in the 10th house instead of the 9th. Remember, the houses are just topic areas of life. So different areas of life would be more highlighted for you than they would be in your configuration at that time. So if I take you back, you can see that they're up here. So like I said, each of these planets has different, like almost like personality traits, very distinctive traits unique to each of them. But again, now we took that chart and we're wrapping it around the globe. So you're going to see 4 lines for each of the planets. We talked about Venus a few times. Venus, that romance and desire, giving and receiving love, but also relating to people. So you having students and clients and things like that, it can be a good planet for you. Another one, that's important for you is Mercury, because Mercury is the ruler of your 2nd house of money. Remember how I said that's your money? But your work is up here in Aries, and your daily routine is in Capricorn with Saturn. So we have to synthesize everything. It's not so simple. We can see that Venus is ascending on this side of the world, but it'll be descending on this side. So it's just like wrapped around as a 3D. You also have, as we talked about, your partner is from New Zealand, and you have a Venus line there right through New Zealand. Again, I see a lot of couples have Venus lines in each other's like birth area. I should also say you don't have to be exactly on one of these lines for it to have range. So I go up to about 250 miles, about 400 kilometers. So really, like, this Mercury line is active across all of New Zealand. Remember when I said about Mercury being important for your money, your material resources, how you have to sustain yourself? You also have Mercury right on your midheaven, natally up here. But in this location, it's down on the IC. So if we look at this relocated chart on the top left, we can see now we've flipped your chart around. You have the Mercury down there on the IC. And similar to me, remember how I told you my chart flips backwards in yours flips backwards in New Zealand. So
interesting. To say a bit of context for the people, my partner is from New Zealand, and we have this lifestyle where we are based in Europe, but we go to New Zealand 3 months a year. So it's interesting for me to observe that.
And the IC line is really definitely associated with like home life and feeling comfortable at home, those kind of things. The IC, Sun IC, is particularly if somebody's going to retire or they want to find a place they feel like they connect to the land itself. That can be a really nice one. This one can be a nice real estate line as well because it's the Venus. Remember all the nice things from Venus, but relating to, your actual home and real estate itself. So it kind of really enhances home life down here. But again, Mercury is the messenger of the gods. It's related to thinking and teaching and learning and writing. And so I think you even said that you worked on a writing project while you were there, which is also very on brand for that configuration you have in New Zealand. Did you want to share
Yes.
about that?
Yeah, I was telling you that I went to actually live in New Zealand for 2 years during the pandemic. And I had the idea to launch Feel Good French at the time. I was like, okay, I've been a teacher for many years. I want to set up my own business, my own school. But I started the website and everything. But at the time, I had this kind of inspiration that came to me, and I was near Wellington on the coast in a little town called Castle Point. That's where we spend a lot of time because my partner is from there, and he's got this family house by the beach. It's literally like on the water. It's such a pretty spot, Castle Point, yeah, near Wellington. And I just had this strong inspiration pull towards writing the story of my granddad. So my granddad is a Vietnamese, was a Vietnamese, and he has the most interesting story as he fought for France in the army, become parachutist, and went into decolonization country like Madagascar, where he met my grandma, and then Algeria, Senegal, and he passed away a few years before the moment where I decided to write. And it was kind of a way for me as well to go back to the origin. I'm I used to be very close to my granddad. That he kind of raised me in a way as well, and I felt this desire for storytelling, for connection, and I made a lot of, and I really spent 10 hours a day doing that for about a year. So that was kind of a big
So
part of my
good.
life at the time.
Yes,
Um,
yeah, and it's so like completely matched with those topics too, because I think you said during lockdown too, staying at home. Yeah, I see you, right? But also talking about your ancestors and writing about your ancestors and sharing that. But also, your ancestor, your grandfather, who completely seems to have affected your inner core, that inner foundational self, who you are when no one's seeing you as well. So it's very much a descriptive place of that. But I could see why you would also get connected to somebody romantically from that area of the world too. Uh, because of the Venus. So yeah, it's just overall like a really nice place, but it would give more emphasis around home. Like you had the idea to launch something on your own entrepreneurially, but here this is more a bit focused on home life or hunkering down and being behind the scenes or something like that. So it may be why you had to kind of get back near where you have a bunch of midheaven lines in France before you really return to this idea of career focus and things like that. You can see in your birthplace because of in your chart. Remember how you have these planets? You have. I'll just show you a little bigger here, and that those same lines: Mercury, Venus, and the Sun, very close to that midheaven. Remember career, public life, how you're appearing versus the home and private life. Um, in France is going to be the closest lines because they're so tight in that chart. They're going to be the closest actually in Portugal, and even for you in Ireland and the UK as well. So maybe more students to learn French from these areas as well could be.
I lived in Lisboa. I don't know if I told you for 6 months, and it has been one of the best 6 months in my life. I felt very vibrant, lot of energy. Well, I was really young, but it was like one of those memorable time. And I've been back and forth to Lisboa because I feel this attraction towards Portugal and
Yes,
Lisboa in particular. I really like the area.
it's
So,
so close, so close. It's only like 15 kilometers
yeah,
from, so you're really tight in there.
yeah.
And even this one, when you're saying about the vitality, I think the sun can make us feel that way as well. Just feeling our
Mm.
authentic self, feeling kind of vibrant, can be another theme. But Venus, like I said, Jupiter and Venus are fan favorites because they tend to feel really good. And maybe can be a little bit indulgent even sometimes, but a lot of pleasure can be had on Venus lines. Remember, I was saying there's something we can also look at locally. We actually call it local space. It's a totally different technique.
Ah,
in locational astrology, but it's layered on top. It's more based on the horizon instead of the globe. But I just thought it would be fun to point out that where you're living now, you're in San Sebastian, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you follow this descending line down, but you're also sandwiched between these guys here, the Lot of Fortune and the Lot of Spirit. I see a lot of people get attracted to this, especially this purple one here, because it's another one of those things that we get really drawn to. Sometimes with this descendant too, I'll see people get drawn there because like their partner gets a job or something and they end up moving there for somebody else, or they stay for somebody else, but it can be it's not like a bad place for you at all. These people tend to enjoy those lines.
We definitely, my partner and I feel that
Yeah.
it's not that we don't belong here, but we both really much want now to only be in France and New Zealand, and we are currently searching our place to live in France. But when you mentioned that I don't have a major line here, I was like, that kind of makes sense, because I don't feel that it's necessarily supportive, even if I like the nature and everything. But in terms of vibration, I can relate to the fact that maybe there is no lines here.
Yeah, I mean, you have it really over on the eastern side, which is still going to be, somewhat relatable. I think you were in Nice when we spoke, just kind of preparing. And you can see in that location, you have the moon touching the midheaven, though, so it's plugged into that power outlet over there. Again, remember how I was saying with my moon line over in Rome or the Italy area, sometimes that can magnify our emotional state or our intuition or subconscious or things. This one could be pretty good for your visibility as well as a nurturer or somebody who's seen as somebody who takes care of others or things like that. And I think of teachers that way as well, especially somebody trying to nurture somebody coming out of their shell, trying to speak a second language or something. It's not a terrible location, but your emotions themselves might be a bit highlighted. Again, everything's a bit career focused, so sometimes that doesn't feel quite as like it feels like cozy home, that kind of thing. But you may enjoy something in this area almost on the other side of where you are. A lot of people, like I say, really like these spirit lines. So you could even think about something, if you like the mountains, this could be a nice area like Grenoble and these areas. The spirit lines are very, very popular. People tend to like those a lot. I wouldn't get right on Saturn. Remember we were talking about Saturn. So it gets a little more complicated. Uranus here loves sudden changes, so it's a little hard to settle there. It can feel very exciting trips and vacations, but I don't usually advise people to move onto a Uranus line if they're trying to settle. I've even had people move there because they're in technology or tech founders and things like that. And it's great for that kind of work, but they have to change housing a lot because it's just an unsettled kind of mode. But as you get up more to Annecy or something like this, you get into the more territory of kind of experiencing, feeling the authentic expression of self.
And for the roots and settling down, balance between life-work balance, like what do you think would be a supportive?
These are also places that are going to activate some career, but because you have, remember how I said each sign has a planet that's in charge, a ruler. You have your IC in Libra, so that puts Venus in charge of home. So you could also consider somewhere up here in the northwest as well. So again, like Angers, Nantes, this IC can be, it's an ICMC. It can be nice for work-life balance as well. So La Rochelle, Roquefort, these areas could also be really nice. I wouldn't get right on this dark one. This black moon is more related to like revealing things about our subconscious. It could be great for shadow work or things like that. But it's not necessarily like the most cozy, comfy, as well. And it's very close to Paris as well. So yeah, if it were me to see the moon over here, I would think about this being a more of a zone for work-life balance, feeling kind of the benefits of the planets that are a little bit easier and more supportive. And again, for you, the Mercury is ruling your second house of money as well. So everyone needs to feel that security of sustaining yourself. So that could be a nice one. And as well as teaching. Remember how I said Mercury can be related to teaching and as well. So Jupiter and Mercury are both the teachers of the zodiac. You also have your main birth chart configuration. So we're not relocating the chart. We have to go pretty far east to west to change that.
And what do you think of Les Landes area? Do you know Les Landes? It's a little bit more north of where I live in San Sebastian.
Okay.
It's south of Bordeaux. Yes. So it might be a bit similar to San Sebastian, no?
It could be. I mean, you also like again, Bordeaux has that we call Black Moon Lilith.
Yeah,
It's more like your rebellious side because it's bringing up those unconscious drives or things that are more taboo. But you could, if you like the coast and you don't want to
yeah.
be far north with like more rainy weather, you could really hug the coast and stay in this area. Is this the the area you were mentioning?
Yeah. That's the area that we are currently looking at, like by the
Yes.
coast,
Yes, this coast is the same
southwest.
as up north there with the icy everything. So I would really think that could be a nice option as well. You could also consider out into the inland this way with these lines as well. But this is exactly what I was talking about up there, but it's just really right in on the coast. So as you see these towns and you play with the map or something, like I said, you might feel quite nice on those. But again, for your work specifically as a teacher and a communicator, those can be really lovely and they're all really career related. But again, Venus is the ruler of your icy, the whole thing.
Yeah,
And it can be nice with a romantic partner too, because it enhances that part of yourself that's good
yeah.
at receiving and giving love and that exchange as well.
You also do a couple consultation, which I find really interesting because often we have different charts, and sometimes, like I think for you to analyze two charts and put them together must be quite interesting to see. Okay, for you two, where would be the? It's a bit like a lot of algorithm, no, in your head. Like, okay, what can we do here?
You know, there's so much AI right now, but I'm like, I think it would have to be a quantum computer to be able to do this because there's too many things to calculate. And also, once you have done it for a while and see experiences with different couples, you can also maybe predict better what might happen. But it's fun to compare the couples. And so usually I always take notes for my clients, but usually I'll have one column for each client, you know, if they're in a couple. And then in the middle is where I write down the common places. And then we can discuss where they both have nice things going on that support whatever their goals are specifically. Yeah. But you can see, like I said, the map doesn't lie. It tends to describe these experiences. Like I said, even, you know, with JFK, if we go out to Dallas, where he was very famously assassinated, you can see he has a Chiron and a Pluto right there. And this one is typically historically associated with things like murder or infamy. And he has it. Even Julius Caesar had a Pluto descending transit right across Rome the day that he was killed on the Ides of March in 44 BC. So it's very much related to those kind of things. It doesn't mean you're going to get murdered if you go to a Pluto line. It just means that if something gets activated with timing, this might be the place where it could happen to something violent or something traumatic or intense, especially with Chiron.
So, Kim, is that what you do on your free time? Do you just go and explore historical people's line on the map?
Absolutely.
That's endless, no? You can do that, a new person every day.
Absolutely endless. This is why I'm saying it can be easily something that turns into an obsession. You know,
Yeah.
astrology was my favorite hobby. And so I was actually worried about turning it into my career when I decided to do it full time. I was doing reading, you know, I was always known on film sets as like, oh, Kim can read your astrology chart and look at your map and stuff. So everyone was always coming. I've read for a lot of famous people and directors and things, but I only do celebrities publicly that I haven't signed an NDA
Of
over.
course.
But and people who are very, very public, you know, I don't want to invade someone's privacy or something, but people who are world famous, you know, they kind of tend to lose that privacy anyway. But yeah, it's endless. Historical events, you know, sports games. You can look at everything. I actually did a study. It took me about a month, and I studied 60 great fires around the world. And you could see the actual same trigger over and over and over for great fires. I've studied mass shootings in the United States. Other topics not as dark. I've studied, you know, rise to fame, people becoming famous, and what triggered that. And it's usually a Uranus MC, by the way, including Lionel Messi and Vivian Lee, and a lot of famous actors and places that they had an activation of like sudden rise to fame. So yeah, it's very, very endless.
Very
And very
current with the football.
yes.
Wow, it's very. I find like you could speak about that for hours because it's so. Every time you analyze a map with me, I'm like, wow, another explanation, another line, like and yeah, I think for you it's I think it's a whole world, and thank you for making it accessible to everyone, for explaining it in terms that we understand. It was really interesting to cover all those topics. So if you want to give a piece of advice to finish to the people who have those itchy feet as well, and that question themselves in terms of territory, where to go next. Like, what would you tell them as you, Kim, a person, and also with your background as astrocartographer? What would you like to share?
Yeah, and like I was saying earlier, I think that our intuition, like our soul knows where our energy is. So if you have a strong intuition about a place, I wouldn't be like, oh no, maybe it's one of the danger places, or something like that. Because usually, if you really kind of have a clear sense of intuition drawing you somewhere, it's going to draw you there for a reason, even if it is a life lesson, but it'll tend to be the place that, is going to draw something out of you that's like for that next phase or something. And also, short trips is very different from relocating, right? So,
Yeah.
and if it's just for fun or something like that, the only time it tends to be a little bit harder is like if somebody wants to go lay on the beach and just have a nice summer book read or something, but they go to like a Mars line. Mars requires action and being active, so I would tell somebody, don't skip it. You can go to the Mars line. Just make sure to take the morning swim or go hiking or do the station hike or something. Get the Mars satisfied because it wants activity. And so that's the idea of just if you want to pull your map up, just those overarching themes can be nice things to look up before you go, because then you might set yourself up for a nice experience versus like a more challenging one if you're ignoring the energy pool that you're like diving into. But yeah, I never tell somebody like, don't go there. Usually I'll tell them some advice of like, okay, you're going to experience this and this, so here's a good way to handle that so you don't have like a really bad experience.
I was wondering, just to finish as well, that I had this discussion after I met you with my partner about how he feels about places and how I feel about places. Do you think that there is a lot of, according to our personality and like our own sensitivity, do you think that some people are kind of immune to feeling those energy, the differences of energy, like, and some people are like sponges, they absorb everything. Like, according to, you had so many clients, do you feel the differences? Do you feel like some people are way more responsive and they got influenced so much by where they are, and other people are kind of, they can be good anywhere, or they are kind of stable anywhere?
No, I actually think that it to play out differently. Like some people will experience it internally because they are very sensitive. So they'll say, oh, I felt rage here. Whereas another person might experience it as an actual event that comes to them to cause the feeling. So it's really interesting as a distinction. Think about like Jungian psychology, and the thing that we're scared of, or the shadow part that we haven't brought up, is going to appear as an event to trigger that to be processed. And I think this is how this works as well, because like even when I have a couples reading, like I said, we talked about, I do that. Oftentimes it'll be the woman who books the appointment. Sometimes actually it's lovely because the husband will or the partner will book it as like a birthday gift or something like that, and they'll do it together. But oftentimes the man in the relationship starts the appointment like this, and by the end they're like this, because the circumstances tend to really line up. And whether it's good or bad or in between, usually I'll say this and this is what would describe that energy, and then they're like, what? Why do you know that? Just the same as my first reading. That's how I got interested as well. So by the end, the husband's like, we should book a follow-up, and how do I learn astrology? And so it's very interesting because it does work. And I don't know why it works, but it really tends to describe the circumstances. And so some people will experience it internally, and some people will see it happen as an event or a combination somewhere there.
Kim, thank you so much for everything you shared. Just to conclude, could you say like a little bit how could people find you? Like what do you offer? I know you also have a retreat, so people can find you on YouTube. I'm going to share the link if they want to go more in depth because you have fantastic videos that explains everything, and the videos are really well done, as you are from a background of with cinema and filmmaking, and so I really recommend people to go and watch your videos. And could you tell us a little bit about what other services you propose and the retreat coming?
Yeah, so I do the one-on-one readings with clients, whether one person or a couple or family, but everyone could find anything on my website, kimmott.com. So KIMMOTT, two M's, two T's. And I have actually completely published guides on the blog there, as well as interpretations for every line. So if you use like astro.com and then you want to look at the interpretations I have, sometimes they'll be a little bit more open-minded than the ones you'll see on the website. So you can use it that way to like learn or just explore your own map. But you can also book a consultation. And then I have the YouTube, which is also, like you said, very like educational oriented and just sharing what the way to look at your map is, or just examples, like celebrity examples. And then two colleagues of mine, other astrophotographers, are co-hosting with me a retreat in April 2027 in the heart of France in the Loire. So it's going to be hosted at a chateau, and I think it's so cool because you have a chateau retreat as well. But it will be for learning. So we'll have my colleague Aubrey will be teaching the beginner class for people just getting into astrology and astromapping, and then my colleague Faith and I will be doing intermediate and advanced, usually for astrologers who want to add this to their practice. Be able to pull up somebody's map and know, because you don't just suddenly know astrocartography if you learn astrology. You have to start with the astrology first, and then again you can see it's really kind of getting complicated here. So it's more of a retreat to celebrate that, but also like 4 days of intensive learning and examples and things like that. So it'll be really fun.
Oh, that looks really good.
Astrochateau.com. Astro Chateau.
I put the link below. You give me the link after and I can put them. I remember that before, usually when I ask people about France, at the end for the French part, I ask them if they have a favorite French expression to share. I don't know if you have something from the top of your head. It could be anything.
A favorite. Okay, this is going to sound really stupid. But my favorite thing, especially when I was younger, and I still do it every time when I first land in France, which now living here, I still keep my ear open for it. And I hear it less and less over the years, but I still think it's wonderful. It's like, super! Or like, c'est super! Just because it's something so that you would not hear in the United States or something. So whenever I hear, I'm like, oh, what's going on? Because that's a really special phrase. So yes, it's not a really intellectual one, but I think it's a fun.
You make a good impression of the French. I think I can tell that you've got the singing ears.
Like yes, you can help with the pronunciation, which I found fascinating.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Kim. That was phenomenal. Thank you for everything you shared with us. And merci beaucoup. À bientôt.
Merci.
I just wanted to take a little time to thank you. Merci beaucoup for every comment you leave behind. That's really my fuel to keep going and do more content, and I'm really happy every time I hear your thoughts and I have this feeling of a community, and I can feel and I start to get to know you through your comments. And also every time you like a video and you sign up, it makes me confident. That's what I want to do. I want to keep interviewing people. I want to keep doing content creation and building a community. Merci. Merci beaucoup. I do have a question, about astrocartography and the discussion we had with Kim. Myself, I don't really know if I'm 100% a believer or not, but I find this tool quite inspiring, and it kind of keeps you wonder why do we feel the pull, and I'm just curious to know how you feel about it, if you think that would explain some of your illogical pull towards a place, or if you think that you don't believe in this at all. I'd like to know your thoughts and what you think about it. If you haven't watched, I made a video that could interest you for your exploration and the future scouting trip you'd like to do in France. It's a video where I speak about how I do to travel on a budget in an alternative way that could make you discover places more slowly. I put the link here so you can have a look. Voilà. Merci beaucoup. À bientôt. C'était Déborah. Au revoir.